Well, hi, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like it and subscribe to Catalyst Church on social media so you can see more videos like this. Well, in our video series on spiritual disciplines, we've talked about reading the Bible, we've talked about meditation, we've talked about prayer, we've talked about a lot of spiritual habits that help us grow in our walk with the Lord, and most of them are really familiar. Today I wanted to talk to you about fasting, and that tends to be a little bit foreign to us. The idea of a fast isn't revolutionary, right? We're kind of used to taking a break from social media or from sugary foods. But today I wanted to start off this video by saying 3 things that fasting is not. Right? Number 1, fasting is not a diet. Fasting is a voluntary choice we make to abstain from eating for spiritual purposes. So sorry, fasting is not your key to a summer body. We should always have a spiritual reason for fasting, and we'll talk about those reasons in just a minute. Number 2, fasting does not make us super spiritual. And we tend to have this picture in our minds of someone who fasts and they're really godly. You know, when they pray to the Lord, it's sort of like it gets moved to the top of God's pile. He says, oh, that person prayed and they're fasting. We better make sure their prayer request gets answered right away. Right? But here's what we see in Matthew chapter 6, verse 16. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. So did you catch that? Yes, we see that Jesus is saying, don't be hypocritical, don't fast so that other people will see you and think, wow, they're really spiritual. But also he said, when you fast, right? So that means that fasting is for every believer, not just the super spiritual ones. That's good news, right? Fasting isn't a magic formula that suddenly makes you a super Christian, right? Instead, it's a gift, just like all the other spiritual disciplines that we're meant to enjoy, we're meant to use. It's a tool, right? If spiritual discipline is training ourselves to think spiritually, then when we fast, we're training ourselves to see our spiritual hunger. Because when we're fasting, we're going to be reminded of our physical hunger quite often, right? Thirdly and finally, fasting is never done in an unhealthy way. Now, for some Christian brothers and sisters, not eating could have really serious medical implications, and so fasting should look different for them. For some brothers and sisters that are struggling with eating disorders, fasting could be a really negative experience. Another example would be those with really physically demanding jobs. That could be really dangerous for them to not eat and not have enough energy to complete their really demanding jobs, right? And so that doesn't mean they can't fast. It just means that it ought to look a little different, right? Fasting should always lead us to spiritual health, not physically unhealthy decisions. So fasting is when we deprive ourselves from food, and usually we're just drinking water or sometimes juice, and when our stomach is rumbling, we're reminded of our physical needs, and that should remind us of the reason we're fasting, which is always to see our spiritual need for God. Now, I don't know about you, but fasting doesn't exactly sound really fun, right? I'm going to be hungry for a whole day? That doesn't sound great. Why would we fast? Well, throughout the Bible, we see a number of different reasons to fast. We might do this to grow closer to the Lord. Maybe we feel like we're in a spiritually dry season. We might do it to pray with more passion and to remind us to pray. Every time our stomach grumbles, we say, oh yeah, I'm hungry because I'm fasting. And the reason I'm fasting is to grow closer to the Lord and to grow in my prayer life. Let me take a moment and pray to the Lord right now. Right? We suddenly will pray with more passion, more enthusiasm, and more often. Right? If we're praying every time our stomach grumbles, we're going to pray quite a few times during the day. Maybe there's another time where we're seeking wisdom. We're seeking God's guidance in a situation. Maybe circumstances in our life just feel overwhelming and we say, God, please deliver me from this. And so we fast to remind ourselves of our spiritual need for God. Maybe we use it to fight temptation or sin in our lives, and we remind ourselves of our spiritual need for God's strength every single day. Right? So there's a lot of different ways that we can use fasting to help us in our spiritual lives. Again, it's a gift, right? We're training ourselves to think differently. So when our stomach grumbles, we're reminded of our spiritual need for God, right? And so then when we go to spend time with the Lord, we're mindful of our spiritual needs. And so that time with the Lord becomes more meaningful. We start to crave it more and more, and we start to realize, I need the Lord like this every day, not just when I'm fasting. Right? And so maybe you've watched all these videos and you said, I'm still having a hard time reading my Bible. or my prayer life still feels kind of dry and rehearsed, I'd encourage you to try fasting. And this is something that we can use. Maybe it's just for a whole day, maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's just a meal. But by using this discipline of fasting, we train ourselves to see how much we need the Lord. And so those times where we feel separated from God, it's going to force us to draw closer and closer to Him. So that's why fasting is a gift. It's not an obligation or something that's just awful that we have to inflict upon ourselves, right? It's a gift that God has given us to help us see our need for Him. That's why fasting is such a great tool in our spiritual lives. Well, I hope this video has been helpful to you. Be sure to like it and subscribe to Catalyst Church so you can see more videos like this. I'll see you next time.